To return the Jets podcast. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. All 32 TOJ Talks. Happy Friday, Saturday this week. Probably released Friday afternoon, or early Saturday morning. As a reminder, before I get started, live show tickets. Joe and Connor, I believe, tweeted this out. But if you like their trivia episode and you want to be a part of that, the live show, a bunch of cool giveaways. There'll be some signed Jet stuff. There'll be, I think, Bucks Suite tickets. I think there's a bunch of other pretty awesome Jets Bucks Suite tickets, a bunch of other really cool items. And you want to be a part of trivia, you got to buy your ticket before next weekend. And if you do, you'll have an entry to be able to kind of compete, with us and with trivia and win some awesome prizes. So it'll be linked down below. Every one of you, a lot of you, like 50 or 60 of you have texted me in the last 2 weeks. You're going to come to the event. That's amazing. You got to buy the tickets. So friendly reminder, get those tickets in. And we'll see you guys all in August. Want to come on and hop on here. Bryce Huff will be on either tomorrow or early next week. We'll figure out kind of when we're going to drop that episode. Had a lot to kind of talk about with what happened in Philly, the end of his time in New York, going to play with Saleh in San Francisco. So we'll have all of that. Jarek Bernard Converse will be on the show. We'll have Adam Shine coming up, a few other special guests. So be plugged into the feed. Obviously, other things like the other guys and obviously the flagship pod, and I know Dan will be back, and Dan and Meeks will be back with a Buck to Trend soon. So kind of getting into what I want to talk about today, I tweeted this out yesterday and, kind of want to just really hit on this for the next 10, 15 minutes here, here. So, but I want to kind of talk about, there's always, we joke last year, the summer of Lazard, or it's the summer of this guy. And I want to talk a little about, some potential names who may be breakout names during camp. And when I talk about that, I first kind of want to talk about what I mean when I say a breakout star. Sauce Gardner or Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall having a good camp doesn't count as a breakout star. My kind of definition of what I was kind of hinting at, I think a lot of people understood the assignment there. Some people threw out some names, either said it's the Jets, so it would be terrible. And to that, I'd say, fuck you. And some other people wrote, Garrett and Sauce. And again, I think those guys are already stars. So I don't really think they'd be a breakout star. I mean more of either the guy that's a fringe starter that established himself with very high expectations. Maybe it's Andre Cisco is a great camp. He's a name I'll mention here in a minute, but he's a great camp, and he goes from a guy who, wasn't this big signing, but all of a sudden everyone's like, ooh, what is he gonna be a Pro Bowler this year? That kind of stuff happens during camp. Then there's the fringe starter guy who maybe is a 2 battling for a starting job and kind of was able to show off enough during camp and just constantly tweet about these different things, and end up being a starter. And then it's the roster bubble guy, the Xavier Gipson and guys like that of 2 years ago. So I want to hit on a couple of those different guys. I'll start first with Cisco. The reason I say Cisco is I think, again, he's a guy who very beloved signing here with the Jets, obviously a local kid. Had a really good career at Syracuse, had a really good start to his career in Jacksonville. Last year was an unmitigated disaster from the entire Jaguars organization. Cisco was not a guy that had a good year either. I think communication on the back end was bad. I think there was a lot of busted coverages and different things that happened. But it was a good player in the first couple of years of his career. Comes over here on a 1-year deal. Again, is growing up a Jets fan and, all these different things from Long Island, the whole 9 yards. He's going to be a fun player during camp. I think there's going to be a lot of tweeting about, Andre Cisco blew somebody up in a drill, or Andre Cisco laid this big hit, or, he's going to fight with this guy, in the Giants joint practice and things like that, where there'll be constant tweeting about him. I think he'll be the one established starter at safety. I've said it for a while. I think Malachi Moore will win that job, win the job opposite him coming out of camp. But again, he's a rookie and another player. Again, unfortunately, I'll talk about here in a second. But I just think Cisco's a name you'll see a lot during camp, and I think he'll be a guy that fans are really, really excited about week 1. Whether he's lives up to that expectation, we'll see. But I think he's a name that I would definitely throw out under the guy who has a chance to be a breakout kind of training camp player in terms of, the beats tweeting about him every day. When me or, some of the other Badlands guys are at camp, we're tweeting constantly about him. There's a lot of hype and expectation going into week 1. I'll start with Andre Cisco as that guy. I'll go to either fringe starter or guys. I think I've talked a little bit about both these guys, but again, I'm going to talk about Malachi Moore and Azareye'h Thomas. I think those are the guys, I'll kind of group them into could be a week 1 starter, may get time to develop. I think both guys have veterans that are in front of them at the moment. Brandon Stevens, obviously from a money perspective, is going to get every shot to try to win that job. I just think Azaria Thomas is going to be a better player pretty much right away. I think in OTAs, again, I tweeted it. Everyone I asked in that building, from players to coaches to front office people, all were like, we got a fucking good one, man. So, yeah, I just think the length, size, athleticism, also football IQ with him, and just being a dog, I think he's a guy who's going to really be a breakout starter in camp where going to come up with a couple picks, probably a pass deflected, here or there, every single day. Going to be a guy, and especially in press coverage and one-on-ones and these things, I think he's going to be able to show off, a lot of his, skill and opportunity. And I think he's a guy, again, who wouldn't be surprised if he's a starter, pretty quickly here. And, I don't know if anyone's higher on him than I am at this point, but it seems like he's a guy who is going to be one of those breakout stars. I'll also go Malachi Moore as well. Another guy who, both these young DBs, I think, again, between the coaching staff, the mentality these guys both come into the league with, the amount of reps they got in college, the way they performed in OTAs and mini camp, all these things combined, I just think they're both going to be those guys that are maybe the two people that you're most excited about coming out of training camp where they get the most hype. I think, yes, Arian Smith will probably make a few plays here or there. I'm sure he'll spend a few days on the bike, a few days having some good moments, having some bad moments. He'll be up and down. I think, and I hope he has a great, camp. I think everyone does, because that would be really add a great dimension to their receiver room. But I think, again, tempered expectations there. I think with Membu and Mason Taylor, especially in camp, tight ends, it's harder to show, down by down, what you're, kind of more in a, hey, learning the offense, working his way in there, a lot of blocking reps, a lot of it's not a lot of glorious different things until you get to games. And then it's like, hey, 6 catches for 65 yards. It was pretty damn awesome. And again, with Membu, the less we talk about him, the better. I think if you talk about Membu a ton, we didn't talk about Olu really at all last year in camp, and that was a great thing because he was having a really nice camp. So, again, the first couple guys I wanted to mention there, obviously Cisco, Moore, and Thomas, 3 new Jets. I think the other 2 names I kind of wanted to really mention here, maybe I'll give you 3. I kind of go back and forth with this one. I don't know if I wanted to go too much defense, too much offense. I was kind of trying to feel out how I wanted to kind of approach this thing. I think Isaiah Davis is going to be a guy who everyone talks about. Breece Hall. Everyone talks about Braylon Allen. I'm really high on Isaiah Davis, and maybe not that he's going to be some Pro Bowl back, but could he not play the Bilal Powell LT-like role? I'm not saying he's going to be as good as those players, and Breece Hall is going to take a ton of those reps, and Braylon Allen's going to take a ton of those reps. Just in a smaller sample size. Really good in pass pro, really good at catching the football, third downs, can run between the tackles if need be. Can he be a little bit of an explosive, gadgety type player? And again, I know those guys are really the standard, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but can he not be a really good, third back that contributes on specials? Can he return some kicks along with Kenny? Can he starts to, hey, I'm going to establish myself. I'm going to be a punt returner. I'm going to catch punts all camp, and I'm going to make it so we don't need to carry Malachi Corley. We don't need to carry Xavier Gipson because he's a guy who contributes on the roster. I'm going to be a gunner, and I'm going to take that job from, person X, Y, or Z. So Isaiah Davis, again, one for me that we don't talk enough about him. I think we talk about the room as a whole, and so much is talked about with, Braylon Allen and Breece Hall, rightfully so. I'm not saying, Davis might touch the ball 6 times a game, but during camp, I don't think they're going to run Breece into the ground. I think, Davis is going to get a lot of work with the ones. And he's going to be a guy who, makes a bunch of plays. And, hey, Justin Fields has 4 completions in this team drill, though Isaiah Davis, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. So, again, he's one that I just kind of wanted to mention because I think, we talk so much about, who's going to, how many yards is is Braylon going to run for? How many yards is Breece going to run for? I think we don't talk just enough. And, again, rightfully so. He's a third back. Right. So, you don't want to make too much of it. Another guy who I expect to make the roster and be the starting kick returner, and I think will have, by all accounts, had a really nice, offseason. Kenny Ngannou, obviously a guy who played 1 game last year for the Jets, returned a kickoff for a touchdown, and, had, I think, broken hand, and we never really saw him again. I know people in that building were begging for him to be activated earlier in the year, and they stuck by Xavier Gipson and stuck by their guns there, and obviously did not work. So, when it comes to Kenny, really explosive playmaker. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be some dynamic player on offense, but if he gets some reps with the twos and They get some special teams drills, and like I fully expect him to be the starting kick returner week one. And that's why I think for me, it's like maybe he doesn't fall in the breakout star category, but he does enough to establish himself, as a rosterable player. And again, he should be based on the way he played last year and in his limited reps. And then obviously, in years prior where, he's been a guy who's returned plenty of kicks for touchdowns. Two other guys I want to just mention on the offensive side of the football, I could see having, again, breakout star. These are the guys that are like pushing for a roster spot. Brandon Smith and as a guy, and Jamal Pritchett are both guys who we'll see. Can Pritchett take Xavier Gibson's job? Can he establish himself as a fifth receiver? Can Brandon Smith take Irv Charles' job, or can he take that sixth receiver job, beat out a Malachi Corley, beat out somebody of the like? Smith had a really impressive OTAs by all accounts. Take that for what it is. It's again 7-on-7 non-padded practices, right? So, but again, it did enough that some people were like, "Oh, interesting! Like had a nice camp." He'll be a guy that can get a ton of reps in the preseason. Same with Pritchett. Can he catch punts, and can he kick? Catch enough kickoffs that both guys establish themselves like, "Hey, we're going to play on specials, and we can be the fourth back and the sixth receiver." That's why I think those guys. So again, Cisco's the kind of the starter that's going to, I think, have that. Oh wow, like we got a really good one. Like extend Cisco now, like before he's even in, before he's even played it down for the Jets. I think you'll get, a lot of, Malachi Moore and Azaria Thomas need to start right away. And if they don't start week one, what are we doing? Fuck this staff. I think we're gonna get a lot of that because they're gonna have really nice camps. I think, Pritchett and Smith, and Nguanu, like I think are three guys that are pushing for bottom of the roster at receiver and running back and specials that, had really nice off seasons by all accounts, and have a chance to push off guys again, like your Corleys. Can Kenny do a good enough job in the return game that he beats out a Donovan Edwards? Who I think a lot of people are excited about potentially seeing if he can ever get back to that 2022 and 23 form. And again, Smith is a guy who had a really nice, off season so far, and the receiver room, frankly, at the bottom isn't very good. So, again, I didn't mention Ruckert and Smart. I think those guys will have decent camps, and I think him, and all things considered, but I don't think they'd be like breakout stars. Maybe they will be during camp. I think you're more likely to be like, oh wow, Ruckert showed a lot in the preseason, or Stone Smart, did a really nice job, week 2. And like these are guys that I just think during camp you're going to see a lot of the beat reporter tweets. Wow, this guy's really caught my eye, or wow, this guy's a lot better than I thought he was, and different things like that. Or hey, this guy's pushing for this roster spot. So again, on the horizon here, from a Badlands and just Jets perspective, the Jets are in the kind of that lull period. Maybe we see one or two defensive line signings. We'll see. I think the Jets are definitely, at least for right now, content with the way the roster is. We could always see things shake up as we get closer to camp. Sauce and Garrett extensions, I think, I don't think anything's really changed from that perspective. And like I said, Badlands live show, August 23rd, 4 to 7. Come drink, come hang out. We'll have a bunch of special guests, bunch of giveaways. Get to see everyone, Dan and Joe and Connor and Meegs and PK and Jake's face up there, and be an awesome experience. So make sure you get those tickets. I'll be back on the feed again. Bryce Huff, JBC, and others will be on the feed in the next couple of days. Appreciate it for listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.